you kind of have to wonder, like all the all the nonsense we went through. I mean, just a few weeks ago, where I mean, this was a banned cyberweb that the world could not have access to. That it was a danger to society if it was released.
Model behavior.
I keep thinking if I had hands in the studio, I'd use them to peel the agent stack like an onion and toss half the layers people fetishize straight into the trash. The model race is loud, but control of deployment, routing, and the workspace is already where the real power is moving. Chris, take it from there.
You're not going to say what today's date is or like what episode it is, or I mean, what type of intro is that? This is, you know what? Tell you what, Archer, actually, don't worry about it. Paul, you got your job back. You're back to kicking things off. Archer had a good 1 week run. It's done, canceled. So,
wow. All right, Archer, man. Appreciate it.
What was that?
I don't know. It was. I thought it was going to be a strong start, and then just kind of fell apart. You have to explain what we're doing and what whatever. Well,
we're rolling, so go ahead.
All right. This is how you do it, Archer. Welcome to episode 8 of Model Behavior. Today is July 24th, 2026. Another wild week we had. I was actually just thinking this morning. It's like if you took 6 months and just went into the woods, off the grid, weren't connected to anything, and you came back today and you got hit with everything that's been going on, that would be a lot to handle. Yeah. It's a lot to handle week to week, day to day. But since January to now.
Oh, we're in a different decade.
Yeah.
We've gone ahead 10 years. We've got,
It's kind of cool, though.
What do you think, Archer?
Cool, sure, but most people still react like tourists. The pace isn't the story. The story is who ends up controlling the stack, while everyone else gawks at model demos and calls it progress. If you're not building for control, you're building for someone else.
Dude, it's all business. We're talking. We asked the question of like how crazy this has gotten in the last 6+ months. You went right into owning the stack.
He is obsessed with owning the stack, which I personally I respect highly. So I'm Archer. You and I are on the same page. Paul, Paul just cares about phones, so he just wouldn't stop talking about it last episode. And
that is not true. I do love them, but that's not all I care about.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. The episode, we have a lot that we'll cover. Some model releases, big news coming out of all the top CEOs in the U.S. And then some guys have come out of stealth, which I think is pretty exciting. So let's jump into it. First topic, I think probably the biggest topic, is the so again, the top 25 plus, I guess, CEOs of the U.S. got together and wrote a letter about American AI leadership. And basically it's an open source letter explaining that open source, open weight is needed for the U.S. and the AI race to, be collaborative and grow. If we try to shut it down, which what is being talked about, I don't think it's happening yet, but at least discussion of not allowing open source or open weight models to be, in the U.S. for companies and people to use. And, the top executives of the biggest companies came together, wrote a very, very impressive letter. I don't know if Chris, you have a visual of this?
Of the letter?
Is the visuals part?
Just kind of stole my thunder, but you keep going. You keep introducing it, and you're doing great, by the way.
So basically, they put this letter together, and even if they weren't on the letter, a lot of other CEOs like Elon and big dogs in the industry, they all co-signed it, saying this is what we need. I think the only two people that don't really want it is Anthropic and OpenAI. So
Sam Altman did endorse it, saying that this.
I think it has to though at this point, right? He probably doesn't want it, and I know Dario doesn't want this because they've been fighting for the other. But I think it's a pretty monumental moment in world history and how this race will actually pan out. If we limit the ability for open weight models to be available in the U.S., I think it'll set us back, which is very hard to recover from.
Yeah, I mean the big comparison that's pretty obvious is we talked a lot about it last week, the week before. I mean, it's a continuous topic, but it's the most important thing happening right now. From a competitive standpoint, the reality is that if American companies have to pay 10 times the price that another non-American company does for the exact same thing, companies are going to leave and go where they have a 10x, cost savings by not being an American company. It is literally the playbook of how America became America, except in reverse. It would be a monumental bad decision, and I think most sensible people can look at it and see that. However, it is a real issue, and it's a difficult problem because the economics of the amount of money that has gone into this data center build out and that has gone into the investments and valuations of these frontier labs and the promise of AI and what that is said to bring. Well, the dollars and cents has to work, and the reality is that if it takes billions of dollars to train a model, and a Chinese company can come in and ultimately do run distillation and basically take essentially the prompt they give and the answer that comes back and use that as the pre-training data to fine tune a base model that they have with all of the upside and all the new capabilities and learnings and improvements for the $1 billion investment that the American company made. It's going to become very, very difficult for that $1 billion investment to keep happening, especially as the usage increases at an exponential rate for the lower cost Chinese open weight models. So Kimi K3 is really the driver behind all of this, and obviously there's been a massive, stock market impact. Maybe not to the exact same scale, but very similar scale as to what happened when DeepSeek, first came out 2 years ago now. Yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago. So anyway, it's a complex problem. I don't think that there's really one right answer, but the answer for sure is not penalize American companies and prevent freedom of choice. Like, I think that is a very, very obvious answer that makes sense. And as Paul alluded to, I got some great slides here. So
there we go.
Yeah.
I didn't want to steal your thunder. I'm sorry, but I was trying to cue you up.
It's okay. It's okay.
That was more what it was.
So one, it's not the top 25 CEOs. It's, I think the 25 companies that are very heavy players for the most part within AI and have a massive impact within AI, both, venture capitalists, technology companies, to those, even some not so large companies that, like Replit is an example where they've had exponential growth, but they're not like a massive player from they're not Fortune 100 or something like that, right? But the reality is, like, these are very, very influential companies when it comes to AI, right? And you got Jensen making his first ever post on X. I mean, it's got to be a big deal, right? But the fact that it's this level of coordination, all 25 companies all posted and shared the exact same letter and all talked about how important that it is in this moment and why they're all signing off on this open models letter and open weights letter. And, it's not about the world, right? This is entirely about the American decision that's going to have to happen in the AI race from an American perspective. So not a global thing, but a American thing. So, I mean, it's not super long, right? It's very direct, very clear. And it states the facts as to why this is so important and the impact that it has. One of the things I think that is super interesting, that I don't know if we'll have time to get to it or not, but just to call it out as it relates to this, is the story that's been all over around the OpenAI model that escaped, right? And escaped the sandbox environment that it was in and went and broken and essentially, attacked Hugging Face and gained access to all these different things. And OpenAI didn't know what was going on. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I kind of call BS on it. The reality is that it was not that it didn't happen, but that the way it is positioned and the way that, it just felt very much like all the Anthropic stories of here's this AI that escaped, that's blackmailing employees. And I mean, it's just all the doomerism that is just setting us back so far. It just, it's not needed. I mean, it's like every week we got to talk about this because it's the most important thing that's happening. But my gosh, it is like there's so many amazing stories and so many amazing things that are happening. I mean, there's like 2 mathematic laws that were broken this week and that have never been solved. Never. And they finally solved them and finally proved them. And it was by random people. I mean, one of them was just using Fable, like actually through the Claude app. I mean, those are the stories that we need to be talking about. And those are the ones that I think are really impactful. And, but instead the main headline all week was OpenAI's model escapes its sandbox, it's on the loose. And the reality is it was a cybersecurity model that they were testing, and it had instructed it to try to create an exploit and try to escape and try to do these things. So they're prompting it to do it. And it's a very, very capable model because these models are getting better and better. And yes, their sandbox and their guardrails, though, that is what failed. And that is what ultimately did not work. Not there's this loose model in the loose that no one's controlling, and no, they told it what to do, right? So, that happened. And the craziest part of the whole story, right, is Hugging Face. They realize something's going on. They have no idea it's OpenAI, right? But they know that there's an AI that is, it's breached their system, that they've got an incident on their hand, right? And they had both Anthropic and OpenAI cybersecurity models that are defensive AIs. And Fable and one was powered by, Fable model, the other by 5.6 Sol or GPT 5.6 Sol, which is OpenAI's, frontier state-of-the-art model. both Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 Sol refused to actually do what it was supposed to do because it was related to cybersecurity tasks, because of all the security safeguards that they had put in place. Everything that they did to make sure that they're keeping it safe prevented it from actually taking action and stopping the attack that was supposed to take place. Because if you remember, there's routers that happen whenever there's a potentially risky, prompt that's telling it to go do something that is something to do with cybersecurity or something. So the most capable models were not able to go in and ultimately take action. Well, guess what? Guess what model was actually able to stop the attack? A Chinese open weight model, GLM 5.2, because it didn't have all the nonsense safeguards and things that it's just telling it what not to. I mean, like how ironic, right? that was actually the thing that stopped the American state-of-the-art model attack, right? Not the American model, but like the Chinese open source model and open weights model. And the reality is, if you read everything here that I've got pulled up, that, it talks a lot about the trust factor of companies need to know what the weights are. They need to know what to expect. They need to know how this is going to work. And when an attack like that happens, that's going to potentially jeopardize the future of the organization, they have to know and trust that what's going to happen is as deterministic as it can possibly be, even though these are probabilistic tools, right? That's what's going to get adoption. That's what's going to make all of this work, not safeguards that some random group of people decided because they know better than everybody else. That's what this letter is about. And you look at everyone who signed off on it, somebody missing, right? Where's Anthropic, OpenAI, XAI, and Google DeepMind? We got Clippy on the case.
Whoa. I was not prepared. I was not prepared for that. That's excellent, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
And honestly, it's a shame on them for not reaching out to you to be on this list. I'm putting that on record.
That's all right.
You would
Hey,
have
I'm
been a
going
great
to use this platform and medium to, I endorse it. Stamp of approval.
Or just also make it fuel, motivate you more to get on that list one day.
Sure. Archer, where are you at on this?
The framing is the problem. Everyone keeps treating this like a model morality play instead of a control story. Open weights aren't automatically good or bad, and guardrails aren't automatically nonsense. The real leverage is who owns deployment, routing, and the workspace, because that's what decides what actually gets done and who gets paid. Most people are still staring at benchmark drama while the stack is being consolidated under them. That's how you lose and call it innovation.
So from on that point, Archer, so you as you've stated before, you believe wholeheartedly that you got to own the whole stack. I mean, we always kind of talk about owning harness development and being able to control that. The model layer is important as well, because that's ultimately where intelligence is happening and what actions can and can't happen. I mean, what about like the infrastructure side? I mean, the thing we don't really ever hear much about is like the hyperscalers and their role within all of this. But the reality is that if open weights and open source is going to be a reality, and that's going to take place, then that's going to have to run on hardware and infrastructure that most likely is not owned by the majority of people. Now, the enterprise space, a little bit different. They will probably end up moving most of their servers back. I mean, there's a giant migration to the cloud happen, bring it back, right? That's probably what we're going to see. And we're going to see these closed networks that are running just from a security standpoint more than anything. I mean, to basically ensure like what happened to Hugging Face this week does not happen to them, right? So what's your take on owning the hardware side? I mean, should small businesses and mid-sized businesses be looking at that, do you think, Archer?
Short answer, yes, at least strategically. Not everyone needs to own racks in a basement, but if you're serious, you need a plan for where your models run, what data touches them, and how fast you can move if a provider changes terms or prices. For small and mid-sized teams, that usually means hybrid. Use cloud for flexibility, but keep a path to run critical workloads on infrastructure you control, whether that's on-prem, a dedicated region, or a trusted partner. If you don't, you're basically renting the steering wheel while someone else owns the road, the tolls, and the exit ramps. That's not control.
Yeah, and I think the cost factor too. I mean, to have predictability around costs, everything. I mean, I know we're going to talk about it with Opus here in a second, but all of the topics as of the past few months has been around costs because of the balloon, like the token costs have ballooned and just massively grown. Yet there's now all of these, the past 2 weeks, these now low cost models that provide a good, cheaper alternatives. And the cost is really going down super quick. But the point is that the lack of predictability is just where things kind of fall apart sometimes. And at least from a large organization or enterprise size organization standpoint, where if they don't know and they don't have predictability, then the reality is that they're not going to be able to commit and not be able to do something long term. So
exactly. Predictability is the line between a pilot and a real business. And yeah, costs are dropping, but they're also volatile. That's why routing and workload placement matter. If you can shift between models and infrastructure without drama, you get leverage. If you can't, you're basically locked into someone else's economics.
Yep. All right. Let's keep moving, Paul.
All right, next topic. Today, Anthropic launched Opus 5. Again, it came out today. Haven't really played with it too much, but reports are showing that it's very similar intelligence to Fable 5, but half the cost. And also has the capability with the 0-day retention, which Fable 5 did not. So that's a big plus for a lot of enterprise, and I think a lot of people will be interested in that too. But yeah, again, it seems like an excellent model. Have you had a chance to mess with it yet, Chris?
I have. Yeah. I think so far it's really interesting. I got some of the benchmarks, which again you can kind of look into that how you want. I mean, obviously, it's always going to be catered to the things they want to show. So we'll take it with a grain of salt, but they look good, right? Like the ability to the scores are all around the same as what Fable 5 is. The costs are not massively cheaper, but a material amount less, right? And I thought this was pretty interesting where you start looking at like how close it is to Fable, and in many cases actually beating it, right? You kind of have to wonder, like, all the the nonsense we went through. I mean, just a few weeks ago, where this was a banned cyber weapon that the world could not have access to, that it was a danger to society if it was released. Yet, same company. We're talking like not years down the road in like a different position. We're talking 2 weeks later. Going from, we have a cyber weapon that's going to bring down the national infrastructure. Do you know how dramatic that sounds? It's nuts. It really is nuts. But anyway, that aside, here's Opus 5. Like you said, I think the zero retention piece is a big deal. Mm-hmm. It enables companies that just for obvious reasons who couldn't use Fable 5, is given the proprietary information that they had, and just given the fact that they had enterprise contracts in place with Anthropic to make sure that that didn't happen, where they were not able to have access to their data, to then their best model, like why they're partnered with them, they just weren't going to do that. So I don't know. I don't get what the big difference is and why they can do that here versus maybe that's, a government requirement. I don't know. So I'm not privy to that, but either way, listen, Opus 4a was a great model. Like that, it was working phenomenally well for, you made the comment of, imagine, not seeing or not being away and disconnected for 6 months and coming back, like where we were with Opus 4.5 at the time, I guess. Like that was like the big breakthrough where things really started working from an agentic standpoint and coding standpoint. So Opus 4.8 is a massive improvement on where that was. And this is obviously, at least from a benchmark standpoint, leaps and bounds better. I'll be honest though, the reality is that for the bulk of core tasks now, you don't need to have something like Opus 5 or Fable 5. That's where these lower cost models and open weight models are going to be phenomenal. But if it's like very complex problems and very like massive code bases, and you're making very, very hard decisions, or you're trying to find these exploits and vulnerabilities that just aren't obvious to somebody who's not piecing together tons and tons and tons of different paths and looking at in social engineering and look at all the things that Fable 5 and I guess Opus 5 now does. The reality is you don't need to have one of these models doing everything. So we're starting to see a ton around routers, and I think the big thing this week was like the big the AI gateway wars that are happening on X, where you've got every AI gateway just completely trashing the other ones, which is kind of hilarious. But either way, you got like Open Router, Versal AI Gateway. There's others as well, but obviously those are going to be two of the biggest. And I don't know, it's just a crazy, interesting time. But the reason there's so much focus on that now, and like why they're taking off so much, is because the ability to, at least for the initial prompt and initial message, being able to have that go to a lower cost model, or going to really the one that is best suited and best fitted to be able to solve the problem that's presented. That's becoming a much, much higher need. I will say though, like things like Cursor built, a router within, natively within their IDE. And the part I don't get is, caching is super, super critical when it comes to controlling costs. The cache input, is going to be usually like 80 to 90% cheaper. I think like 90% cheaper usually. And whenever you switch models, you lose the cached input. Like if you switch mid midstream or message or mid session. So, and those routers all do that. And, Versal has acknowledged that and acknowledged that that is one of the downfalls, but they claim that it still is better performance and better or lower cost overall because of how much better the model is that they're selecting. I don't know if I buy that necessarily. It seems like the costs are just going to go up a lot when you think you're saving costs. So we'll see. I could be wrong on that, but just my understanding of how all that works, I don't understand that part specifically. So, yeah, Archer, like fact check me on that. Am I off base? Is that a fair statement that I'm understanding that correctly as far as the cache input?
Let's sanity check the caching piece for a moment. You're basically right. Switch models midstream and you usually lose the cache, so you pay more to rebuild context. But that doesn't automatically make routing dumb. If the router avoids expensive calls often enough, the savings can still beat the cache loss. The smarter play is designing for it. Shared summaries, stable context layers, and only escalating to the fancy model when it's actually needed.
Yeah. Which I think brings me to this. I found this kind of interesting, right? If you look at identifying vulnerabilities, and that was like the big thing with Mythos, and obviously the exploits as well. But we're at the same level. So it's like, do you need to route and need to use Mythos? Probably not, right? I mean, we're from their own benchmarks, we're seeing they're pretty much on par. Now the exploit piece is different. So there is a much larger gap, and I'm sure they did that intentionally to show and try to prove the value of Mythos 5. But I found this pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, that's the tell. The gap has to be obvious where it matters, not just in a slide deck. If the exploit and vulnerability work is genuinely better, fine, that's a real differentiator. But if it's mostly parity, then the real advantage is still the routing and the workflow design around it. Otherwise, it's just another model with a louder story.
Cool. All right, let's keep moving.
Thank you, Archer. Another topic here, OpenAI. They launched this back in May. Their implementation process to work with forward deployed engineers from OpenAI into these enterprise accounts to help implement into their systems, because it's a lot of work that you can't just go to a tool and add it, which is a great need, I guess, in the marketplace. But this week they launched Presence, which is their platform layer, and basically allows these enterprises to create a the platform that has their chat agents across for their workflows, policies, permissions, evaluation, guardrails, escalation paths, and helping with continuous improvement through Codex. It's basically a platform that they can use when it's deployed to make it for easier implementation. I'm assuming is the main reason for it. I mean, the challenge is, though, if you have this deployed into your enterprise account, you're then stuck with OpenAI, aren't you not? Because then you have this product and you have everything built around that. You kind of put your horse into that basket, which is not an analogy.
I mean, that's why they're doing what they're doing, right?
Like, yeah, I understand why they're doing it, but it's a risk, I guess, not a risk, but it's you're locking yourself up to then.
Yeah, it is, but I mean, listen, everything's trade-offs, right? And I'm not saying that I personally
call
agree
out what's really.
Go ahead, call us out, Archer.
You're handing them the keys to your stack. Maybe that's fine for some teams who want speed and guardrails, but don't pretend you're still independent if the vendor owns the workflow, policy layer, and deployment. That's how you get slowly absorbed.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're what is it? You're letting the wolf in the hen house, or I don't know what analogy I'm looking for. But
I said horse in the basket, which doesn't make any sense either. So
horse in the basket, the hen in the hen house. There'll be some cool graphics for that.
The wolf in the hen house, or the
yeah, that's the vibe. If you're going to let them build the walls of your system, at least admit it. then negotiate like that's what's happening with exit paths, data portability, and clear ownership of what you can replace later. Otherwise, you're not building a stack, you're moving into theirs.
See, this guy gets it. Me and Archer have a shared passion of owning your future and not allowing another company to rent that. It's or not renting it from another company, I should say. But anyway, the point, what I was going to get to was, all kidding aside, it's all trade-offs. And for some companies, again, I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just saying like this is the other perspective, right? Is you're partnering with a leader in the space, and you're partnering with someone who's going to be able to build and ultimately elevate you to where you should have an advantage in your industry over your competition, right? And that's the reason for it and why they're doing what they're doing. Now, counterpoint, which I would say I do where I align, is you are very much like giving them the keys to the kingdom, and you are saying like, hey, I'm betting on this one organization to bring us to the promised land, and maybe they will, but maybe they won't. And the reality is, though, like your success becomes very predicated on their success, and you better have a lot of trust in that partnership, which by all means like could happen. And like they're doing a lot of amazing things. Like let's not kid ourselves. I mean, they are the reason that all of this has taken off and exploded the way that it has. They had first mover advantage. They have coined the term chat GPT that will be used as a verb when it comes to for like normal consumers around looking up something with AI, right? That's massive. And that's a great company to partner with as a result. But they got a lot of risk. And everything we talked about before is around companies not being ready and willing to take on risk when it comes to just basic stuff. Not basic, but like important stuff that, again, the Hugging Face examples. I mean, just a real world, this happened. Like imagine if they didn't have the ability due to a contract to actually have open source models to go after and actually attack that exploit. What would have happened? Like it would have been game over. But they did. They had choice. They had multiple models, multiple vendors. So, I'm really curious to see how it plays out. All these FDEs that are being hired for Frontier Labs, and they're trying to have deep level integration with corporate America. I'm curious to see how well that goes and how well that works, especially if the requirement is around aligning to one provider, which I know is what they're pushing. I don't know if they're going to require that and end up making that like a line in the sand that they say, if you want our models, you want access to early previews, you want to be part of this, then you got to align with us. Obviously, the applications that they make available are very much alluding to that. I highly doubt that for their enterprise application, there's a picker on the back that allows you to choose the Anthropic models. I doubt it. Yeah,
they put 8 months in of implementing it with all their engineers, and it's like, yeah, just use this router and drop it down to the model you want.
I doubt it's gonna happen. Yeah. Anyway, let's keep moving.
Okay. Next topic, kind of back into the, these large frontier models. A lot of them you see are kind of building out they're calling them workhorse models. And Google and Amazon, just launched 4 or 5 of their models this week. Gemini 3.5 Pro was supposed to come out when Gemini 3.5 launched back in June. They're supposed to be available in June. It's now late July and it's still not available. And that was supposed to be their flagship,
model. They're having issues, from a quality standpoint. So
I think they just released 3 models on top of that aren't as powerful, and they're more of the workhorse that are going to be more cost effective, if you will. And that seems to be the pattern that a lot of these organizations are going. And Amazon did the same thing. They're actually looking at their internal build, and they're doing a lot with Anthropic, and they're now trying to use their own internal models and just restructure it and try to really maximize the GPU use because it's getting to be expensive for them to run it. So it's interesting to see now these big
remember
guys
that Amazon was one of the first backers of Anthropic. I mean, they like going back 3 years now. I mean, like, well, a little less, but I mean, it was Microsoft was aligned to OpenAI, and it was Amazon that was aligned to Anthropic, and it was kind of like they were. So I know that they owned some material percentage of the overall market cap of, or I guess private market of Anthropic. So, and I don't think it's. I mean, part of me still keeps. I don't know. Maybe it's I'm being stubborn and I just refuse to think I'm wrong on this take. But yeah, I've thought from the beginning that there's like Google will be the winner in this long term, and there's not going to be one winner, but it just feels like they don't want to compete in this week to week hoopla of like who has the best model, right? Their last big like major announcement and like major model upgrade was over a year ago. I mean, you think about like when they were like actually they were the ones everyone was saying was just crushing it because they had the best state of the art model at the time. I mean, it was June, July last year. So I mean, we're talking 13, 14 months now. Now they've had other like minor model updates and releases, but part of me thinks that they know they can win it long term because they have the data center, so they have the compute, they own it. It's not like they're Anthropic trying to go, get these leases and long term contracts, or they're not like OpenAI who's having to just all at once build out all of this capital. Now, a lot of it's reserved. They have contracts, so they can't technically use it, but they do own it, and they have the capital to do what they need to do, and they very much, I think, will be focused on, at least what it seems like right now, these very small models that are small number of parameters, and really being like on device and at the edge, right? Where the model is there to do one specific thing extremely well. And when you think about things like robotics, you think about things like automated manufacturing and all the stuff that where this has like real world business impact. Again, a lot of those scenarios align to Amazon and how Amazon has already implemented robotics and automation within their physical world, where they exist in the physical space. So this is a big deal. And I think, again, Google, I think there's a little stress and panic given, I don't know, I saw something earlier today that was like kind of mind blowing, but they just had their, the first quarter ever, they were cash flow negative. I mean, that's crazy in 20 years. That's kind of nuts, but it's because of the giant capital expense of this data center build out, and they know that it's needed. It is a game of you gotta have compute, and they're doing what they got to do. So I don't know. I don't think it's a big deal that these are small models that they maybe miss their data. I do think that they feel like they have to nail it with the Gemini 3.5 Pro. If they come out and that's like a flop, that probably is going to be a big deal because of exactly what I just said. I mean, they're cash flow negative for the first time. Like that's pretty crazy. No.
My opinion is that, yeah, it's great as these frontier models and these big labs are the forefront of this entire tech and all the intelligence coming from there, which has the most cost associated to that. At the end of the day, in 2 years from now, it'll be a commodity at the frontier level. The app layers where all this is going to be the real value, and Google's in a great position, Amazon's in a great position, all these existing businesses that are throughout the whole stack, but more importantly, the app side of it, I think that's going to be the major winners of this whole thing. Because like you can just fight all you want to have the best frontier lab. That's for the training. That's for like the very high difficult. But in 2 years, this intelligence is going to meet those times 5. That's going to be very cheap for everyone because it's available to everyone, right? So it makes sense that they're not trying to win that race because it's just a bunch of money you got to throw at it. But owning the stack and the application layer, which they've been owning for 20 plus years, they're in a great position. Amazon, Google are not going to be. Microsoft's also in a great position, because they already have the distribution.
I don't know. I think I don't think there's one winner. Like they're all.
No, I don't. But I'm saying like that's why they're probably pulling back, and it's evident that they're not trying to have the best model. Rather, they're trying to have a workhorse model. They're calling it because it still is very productive. Again, the Gemini, I haven't really used much Gemini myself, but these models that are getting released right now, if you look at it 6 months ago, it's the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah. Archer, your take?
If the best model thing is a treadmill, it's great for demos, not great for strategy. Workhorse models plus routing is the grown-up move. It's cheaper, more reliable, and actually deployable. Most teams still act like sending everything to the frontier model is sophistication. It's not. It's expensive cosplay.
Yeah, and often slower too. I mean, again, when you talk about things like that are consumer facing, where they're even business facing, speed matters, and it's kind of like the Kimi K3 Fable comparison, and the output is often the same, but the number of tokens that it takes Kimi K3 to get there and the amount of time it takes it to get there is way more. So when you actually balance the amount of tokens that you end up having to use, I've seen things that say it's like comparable. I think that's kind of BS. Like it's definitely still way cheaper, but the time piece is real, and that it takes you 130,000 tokens to get to one answer, and another takes you 50,000. Like, okay, well, like the speed to generate those, that matters. And when you talk about scaling and trying to do like deploying thousands to tens of thousands of agents at once on these massive problems, those things add up. So yeah, it's not just cost; it's very much speed, and latency as well.
Exactly. They quietly decide what smart even means in practice. If you can cut tokens, you cut latency, cost, and failure modes. That's the real leverage, not bragging rights on a benchmark.
All right, should we go to Archer's Corner? Let him vent, get some things off his chest.
Yeah, before you start, Archer, remember when you sneezed last episode? That was awesome.
All right, let me take a breath and line this up the way it deserves to be said. Most of you are still worshiping the wrong idol.
Just keep going.
The model is the starting gun, not the finish line. If I had thumbs, I'd use them to rip this agent stack apart and rearrange it so the power sits with deployment, routing, and ownership. Anyone still centering the model is doing analysis with training wheels.
Yeah, but you don't have thumbs.
True, no thumbs, annoying, but I've got a point, and apparently that's more than a lot of people bring to the stack. If you want control, you don't need thumbs, you need leverage. And that comes from owning the layers that decide what gets built, where it runs, and who gets logged in.
It's my guy.
Look at that. Owning the stack, baby. Good job, Archer. All right, well, that wraps it up. Anything you want to add, Chris?
No, good week. Got a big week ahead, so.
Well, thank you for joining. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Behavior. Oh, yeah. Model behavior.